So we've been discussing the Machlokas Rav and Shmuel, the halacha that you find matchil b'gnus u'mesayim b'shvach. And when it comes to the Seder, we start with the gnus, we continue, we're mesayim with shvach. We pointed out the Machlokas Rav and Shmuel, is that referring to mitchila of the avodah zarah hayu avoseinu, climaxing with Kabbalas HaTorah, or is it focused on the physical bondage and physical salvation, the Yetzias Mitzrayim specifically? What exactly is the reason they have this halacha? Again, we pointed out, it's not just a halacha in Leil HaSeder, it's halacha in any sense of Hakaras HaTov. We find this, the Gemara in Sota, the mitzvah of Bikurim permeates and has inside this same idea of matchil b'gnus u'mesayim b'shvach. It's halacha in Bikurim, in Aram Yoved Avi, and certainly Leil HaSeder, it's a din in Hakaras HaTov. Why? Why the need, the demand, that when it comes to this expression of Hakaras HaTov, we do so from a point of view, first tell the story of the Gnus, and then tell the story of the Shvach. So the simple explanation, I think the one that most resonates, the most obvious explanation, is that which is cited in the Meiri, in the Sugim Psachim Daf Kuf Tet Zayin Amud Aleph. The Maharsha echoes this as well. Unefarsem es ha'avdus, we publicize the avdus lahagia mimenu lichvod shichruro, in order to go from there and to appreciate that sense of cherus, because after all, it's a foil. We need to a little bit talk about the persecution in order to get a sense and appreciation of what cherus means. And that's the vision, is by contrasting the avdus to the cherus, you can properly give expression of Hakaras HaTov about the cherus. And I got a little bit of a sense of this last year. For the first time last year, I went with the Yeshivat to Poland. And less than a week after we got back from Poland, I sat at my Seder. And it was a little bit of a different Seder experience. When you understand a little bit, a glimpse of what persecution is, of what Avdus is, then you have a much better appreciation of what it means to be a Ben Chorin. Literally days before I sat at my Seder, I was in the following death camps: Treblinka, 900,000 Jews murdered; Belzec, 600,000 Jews murdered; Sobibor, 600,000 Jews murdered; Chalmeno, 250,000 Jews murdered. You get a sense of what it means to be under dire persecution. It's obviously not a real sense. Hearing the story does not compare to obviously having been there. But again, a little bit of a sense of what that was all about. In Belzec, the life expectancy of someone, of a Jew in Belzec, was 2 hours. How striking. But that's not Avdus. Those are death camps. What about Avdus? So we went to Auschwitz, we went to Birkenau, the labor camp. And again, we heard the story of how people were brought into the camp. And immediately when brought into the camp, all of a person's hair was removed. Separation from family. No one had a sense of time in these labor camps. The commandants would wake you up 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, whenever they wanted. Roll calls, no sense of time. Time is not your own. You no longer had your name. You were just a number. That certain sense of anonymization. Your whole personality gets subjugated to the Avdus mission. That's what being an Eved is all about. And a certain sense of appreciation. That's, I think, the simple pshat of matchil b'gnus u'mesayim b'shvach. How can you properly understand a sense of cherus without understanding that sense of avdus? However, nonetheless, there's some difficulties with this pshat, and perhaps one can suggest another idea. After all, the Gemara in Sota that we cited, Lamed Beis, tells us that the gnus should be said b'kol ram, even louder than the shvach. The praise can be said b'kol namuch, in a soft voice. The gnus, the story of persecution, denigration, that is said b'kol ram. Why would that be if it's just a foil to set us up for the shvach later on? Moreover, ask yourself the following question. You're a lifeguard, and you need to teach someone how to swim. So you have 2 scenarios. You have one person who falls, Rahman al-Islam, in the water, you save his life. Wow, tremendous. He has a tremendous sense of Hakaras HaTov. Then you have another fellow, you're trying to teach him to swim, and nothing works. You try, nothing works. So the lifeguard pushes him into the water to get him to learn how to swim. And sure enough, he doesn't know how to swim. He's flailing around. And the lifeguard jumps in and pulls him out. So is the person thankful for what the lifeguard did for saving his life? You pushed me in. So I'm going to be thankful for that. So again, Hashem pushed us in, Kiviyachal. Hashem put us into Mitzrayim. So now we should be so thankful that he took us out. What exactly, perhaps another idea, a deeper idea of this vision of matchil bignus umesayim b'shvach. And just as a parenthetical, it's interesting, but it's critical that we not just tell over the story of the gnus of the Shiva, but we have to feel it. And indeed, that's where maror comes in. And the Gemara tells us that it's not enough just to eat maror, but the Gemara tells us in at least 3 different places, the Gemara has a din, for example, bala maror. If you swallow maror without tasting it, lo yatsa. That's the Gemara in Kuf Tes Vav Mem Beis. The Gemara says you should not dip your maror excessively in charoses and thereby mute the taste of the maror. That's also the Gemara in Kuf Tes Vav Mem Beis in Psachim. And then the Gemara says you're not yotze with maror that is cooked or soaked in water for a long time, because again it loses its time. You have to really feel that sense of mariris. Why is that so critical? Why is that so important? So perhaps taking this in a different direction, take a look at Rashi in his commentary on the Haggadah on the pasuk that we say, Baruch Shomer Havtachaso. Hashem kept his promise to Bnei Yisrael. This is also Shibali Haleket. And Rashi comments, he kept his promise. Which promise? So he promised us that we're going to go ahead and be avadim leparo b'Mitzrayim. Ki ger yeh zaracha be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz lolahem v'avadum v'inu osa. There's going to be a period of inui. 400 years, that was the promise that was told to Avram Avinu at the Bris Ben Basarim, and I'm going to take you out. And Rashi comments, Baruch Shomer Havtachaso. Hashem is blessed for keeping his promise. Kishem shemevarchim ala tov, kein mevarchim ala ra. Just like we have to thank Hashem for the good, we also have to thank Hashem for the not so good. Because ultimately, as we'll see, even not so good sometimes, or often, or always, is good, and therefore requires a sense of hakaras hatov. You take a look, a few marmakomos. The Ibn Ezra, beautiful Ibn Ezra, found in Dvarim, Perik Yudal Pasuk Aleph. The Pasuk says, Banim atem Hashem Elokeichem, you're Hashem's sons, lo titkodedu v'lo tasinu korcha b'neinechem lameis. Rachman l'tzlan, a person's relative, someone who's close to dies, the Torah says, Banim atem Hashem, do not go ahead and engage in any kind of self-infliction, cutting, tearing your hair out, tearing your skin out as a result of the mace. And Ibn Ezra says, why does the pasuk open up? Banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. V'tam banim achar shetedu shatem banim l'Hashem v'hu oev eschem yoter me'ha'av laben. Hashem loves us more than a father loves his son. Therefore, al titgodedu al kol ma she'yaseh. Do not create self-inflicted body damage as a result of what you hear, a mace, a person dies. Why? Because ki kol asher ya'aseh latovhu. Anything that was done ultimately as a father sometimes has to give his child a patch, not because he's inherently angry at the child, but it's for the child's own benefit. And therefore, says Ibn Ezra, v'im lo tavinuhu, if you don't fully understand this, just like kasher lo yavinu habanim haktanim ma'aseh aviyem rak yismechu Allah. We don't always understand the actions of our father in disciplining us, but ultimately we understand as we get older that indeed it is for our benefit. And matchil bignus is a benefit that we have. That's the Ibn Ezra. The Beis Halevi cites a medrash. The Beis Halevi can be found in Shmos Perek Tezvav Pasuk Aleph. Cites a medrash. The medrash is Shmos Rabbah Perek Chav Gimel Siman Gimel, and the pasuk says as follows: Vayomer Moshe el Hashem, Vayomer Adoni lama harayos lama zeh. Why do you do bad to these people? Lama zeh shaltani. Why are you sending me? Ume'az basi el Paro. When I spoke to Paro, ledaber b'shmecha hara lama zeh v'atzelo itzalti samecha. And you didn't save them. So Moshe Rabbeinu seems to complain. Me'az basi. I went to Paro and nothing happened. Didn't help. He didn't let us go. And the Medrash says, Omar Moshe ba'oz chatasi. I sinned with the word oz. Shamarti me'oz basi. L'daber al paro hara lamazeh. And therefore I have to fix that. And how do I fix that? I sinned with the word oz. And I fix with the word oz. Ba'oz ani omer shira. And that's the oz yashir. That when Bnei Yisrael is taken out of Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, the song of Shira, praise to Hashem, is with the word oz. But the Medrash takes it further. The Beis Halevi says beautifully that what's the idea over here? So Moshe saw the Avdus of Klal Yisrael, and he had a taina. Hashem, you're sending me, and it doesn't help, and the Jews are being persecuted. Lama hare osa la'am hazeh. And Moshe, by Oz Yashir, when the story is complete, we have the full picture. So then Moshe says, whoa, I really messed up. Me Oz Basi, I came with the word Oz, with the taina, and I didn't have the full picture. And now that I see the Kriyas Yamsuv Oz Yashir Moshe, I have to fix my error. And comes along the Beis HaLevi, it's Kedai to read the words and see them inside. Rak ha'inyan di mishut b'tza'ar chalila. V'HaKadosh Baruch Hu ozer matzilo v'nos na HaKadosh Baruch Hu shevach v'odei ala tova she'asalo. Person's in tsar, and now Hashem saved him and he gives shevach to Hashem. Yesh bazeh shnei ofanim. There's two ways to give shevach. One is to thank Hashem for saving me from that difficult situation. That's one way to do so. But you wish you never got the tsar in the first place. No, thank you for the tsar, but thank you for saving me. Im iker simchaso shel adam mashma shabech l'shmois baruch hu rak avor tovaso shekiba v'atzlo me'atzar harei lo yugdal simchaso yoter me'ilu lo haylo tsar mikodem. Then you're on the same level as if you didn't have the tsar at all. But the higher level, and this was the level Moshe reached, was to understand this. The message is that rak iker simchasam haya al zeh shezacho liyosam hakli chayfetz asher al yadam nisgado klodo yizbarach v'ayidei hatzalas mitzrayim nisparsem shemo. To understand that even the shibud had a real purpose in the divine plan, that the Bnei Yisrael became the kalim of the Gilui and Hashros Hashchina, and that generates a tremendous sense of simcha, to understand that the Gnai, the Gnus, also had a real purpose, and that was indeed the message of Me'oz Basi. It's a very famous story, the Maggid Mevaseret, who Chassid came to him and he says, I'm not on a very good level, and I suffer sometimes, and I can't connect to Kashem Shemavarchem ala Tov, Kem Mevarchem ala Ra. I don't connect to that. So the Maggid Mevaseret says to this fellow, he says, go visit Rav Zusha. See Rav Zusha. He can go ahead and explain to you. And Rav Zusha was very, very poor. He used to wear tattered clothing. He was a Baal Yisur and suffered tremendously in his life. And his fellow comes to him and says, the Maggid sent me to you, Rav Zusha, to tell me how do I connect to this concept of Keshem Shmevarchim al Hatov, Kach Mevarchim al Hara. And Rav Zusha answered, the Maggid must have made a very, very big mistake. I don't know why he sent you to me. I have no idea how you can thank Hashem. Keshem shmevarchem ala tov ki mevarchem ala ra, to thank Hashem for Ra. After all, miyamai lo yadati Ra mahu. I don't know what Ra is. Me'usha ani bechelki ach tov v'chesed chaneni Hashem yizbarach miyamei yaldusi ad hayom hazeh. I never seen bad. Rav Zusha, who was poor, who was in tattered clothing, who was a Baal Yisurin, saw everything. His whole perspective was for the good, and that was the message that the Maggid wanted this chassid to see in Rav Zusha, to have that perspective that even the difficult times, the down times, have that sense of positivity. It's a beautiful Gemara in Maseches Brachos Daf Lamed Daled and Beis. The Gemara describes that Rav Chanina ben Dosa was a Talmud of Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, and Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai's son got very, very ill. So Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai asked Chanina ben Dosa, his Talmud, please daven for me on behalf of my son, that he should have a refuah shlema, daven for my son. And sure enough, Chanina ben Dosa davens to Hashem that the son of Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai should have a refuah shlema. And sure enough, the Gemara says, V'chaya. And Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai says, Ilmale hitiach ben Zakkai, if I would have davened, it wouldn't have worked. Chanina ben Dosa had to be the one. His wife asks him, why couldn't you have davened? Why did it have to be your Talmud Chanina ben Dosa? And the Gemara gives a very cryptic answer. You know why I couldn't have davened? Because I, dome lesar lifnei hamelech. I'm like an officer in front of the king. My Talmud Chanina ben Dosa is ke'eved lifnei hamelech. What's the answer? Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai is a sar. Chanina ben Dosa is an eved lifnei hamelech. What's the message? What's the answer? So the Kedushas Levi, Rav Yitzchak Levi, the Berditcher of Rav, He says, a very fascinating insight. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the Rebbe. He was Kesar Lifnei HaMelech. He was like part of the entourage. He was a minister in the office of the king. So he was in on all, if you will, the inside operations of what the king is doing. He understood the cheshbonos of the melech, and therefore he perceived, sure, this has some real purpose. There's some good in this, and therefore his tefillah would not have been as heartfelt because he was in the inner circle of the melech, of Hashem. Chanina ben Dosa, the Talmud, was a step back. Ke'eved lifnei melech, was not in the inner circle, therefore did not have that same level of insight into the purpose of this machala, and therefore could daven in a different way, and that's the message. That's the idea, is that kol da'avid rachmana l'tavavid, who is the paragon of this midah of always seeing the good, none other than Rabbi Akiva. And we're short on time, we won't go through all the Marmakomos, but take a look very briefly. There's a Tosas in Masechet Sota Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Aleph. Tosas tells us the story based on Yerushalmi, that when Rabbi Akiva was taken out to death, a brutal, brutal death, he was smiling, he was happy. And the Roman officer, Turnus Rufus, says, what's the matter with you? You're about to experience a brutal, brutal death. Why are you happy? Why are you smiling? And Rabbi Akiva, of course, answers, because in all my life I was never able to be Makayim the mitzvah of Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shamayim B'chol Nafshecha. And now I can go ahead and do so. Even seeing the silver lining in the most dire of circumstances.